The Birth of English, presented by Jaloush and Dina. English didn't develop naturally in isolation. It was shaped by migration, invasions, and cultural contact over more than 6 centuries. Between 450 and 1066 AD, Britain went through enormous political and social upheaval. Different peoples arrived, settled, fought, and merged, and every one of them left a linguistic mark. By the end of this period, the foundation of the English language as we know it were firmly in place. Britain after the Romans. When the Romans withdrew from Britain in the early 5th century, they took with them government, armies, roads maintenance, and administration. Roman towns slowly declined, trade networks collapsed, and Latin, once a language of law and power, faded from everyone's use. Britain became politically fragmented. This power vacuum created the perfect conditions for new groups to enter and for a new language to rise. Germanic invasion. Germanic tribes from northern Europe, the Anglo-Saxon Jews and Frisians, began migrating to Britain. Unlike the Romans, they didn't just rule, they settled permanently, bringing families, farming traditions, and their language. Most of these groups settled in the north and east of Britain. They spoke closely related Northern Germanic dialects, which explains why English is a Germanic language, not a Romance one like French or Spanish. Formation of Old English. Although the tribes were politically separate, their languages were very similar. Over time, their dialects blended into what we now call Old English, a West Germanic language closely related to Old Frisian. There was no single standard Old English. Instead, it existed as regional dialects, as you can see in the photo below. Roughly mention early kingdoms such as Kent, Northumbria, and Wessex. Society and vocabulary. Anglo-Saxon society was overwhelmingly rural and agricultural. Because of this, Old English vocabulary focused on everyday survival, family, food, tools, animal, weather, and lands. Words like house, man, woman, king, bread, work, and eat come directly from this period. These words from the core vocabulary of modern English, the words we use most often. Writing and Christianity. Writing returned to Britain with the spread of Christianity in the late 6th and 7th centuries. Monks began writing laws, prayers, and poetry, mostly in monasteries. One of the most important early documents is the Laws of Kent, issued by Ethelbert. After his conversion of Christianity, these laws are among the earliest written records of Old English and give us crucial evidence of its grammar and vocabulary. Old English structure. Old English grammar was far more complex than modern English. All nouns had grammatical gender, and there were multiple cases with changing word endings. Because meaning was carried by inflections, word order was flexible, although it maintained the same structure, subject, verb, and object. In many ways, Old English grammar was closer to modern German than modern English. This complexity will later begin to disappear, especially after contact with other languages. Literature and oral tradition. Anglo-Saxon culture was mainly oral. Stories were memorized and performed aloud by poets known as scouts. The most famous surviving work is Beowulf, an epic poem about heroes, monsters, and loyalty. Although written in England, the story reflects strong Scandinavian values, showing how connected this culture already were. Vikings and language change. From around 787 AD, Viking raids began along the English coast. By the 8th and 10th centuries, many Vikings settled permanently. large areas became known as the Danelaw, where Old English and Old Norse existed side by side. Because the languages were similar, speakers simplified grammar to understand each other. This context introduced words like sky, skin, law, sister, take, and helped reduce grammatical endings. Under strong rulers like Alfred the Great, England moved toward political and linguistic unity. Old English became the official language of government and education, even with no influence. However, in 1066, Norman conquest will bring a new ruling class and another dramatic transformation of English. Unification refers to the process by which England gradually became one political kingdom instead of many small competing ones. Before the 9th century, England was divided into several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms such as Kent, Northumbria, Mercia, and Wessex. These kingdoms often fought each other and had different local dialects of Old English. The Vikings' invasions forced Anglo-Saxon rulers to cooperate. Under Alfred the Great, King of Wessex, resistance against the Vikings became more organized. Standardization is the process by which one variety of language becomes dominant and widely accepted for writing, government, and education. As English unified politically, the West Saxon dialect spoken in Wessex became the most influential form of Old English. A key example is the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a historical record written and copied across England using a relatively consistent form of Old English. Although people still spoke local dialects, written Old English became more uniform, making communication across regions easier. So why this mattered for English? English survived as a language of government. A shared written tradition developed, and English was strong enough to absorb later influences. By 1066, Old English was a national language, not just a collection of local dialects.